What's up, 50 folders? So, you're raising. But how much are you raising? Do you know? Do you have a logical reason of why you're raising 1 million or 5 million or $200 million? I don't know, but you need to know. And investors are sure as hell gonna ask you. So, Jim, you're raising a $5 million seed round. Why? Do you hear those crickets? They're in your ear right now, right? You probably have no idea. Well, I've come up with an ingenious way of actually coming up with a logical reason for this. And it's based on a free model that I've made for you. So if you want to know how it works and how to fill it in, stick with me right now, and I'm going to teach you.
Ask Alex. Ask Alex. Because you don't know what you don't know. And if you don't know, now you know.
Yeah.
Okay, so when most founders are raising, they actually have no idea how much they're raising. I know this because people pay me to teach them. I advise a lot of founders, and so I kind of have a little bit of insight into this. Also invest in companies, so there's that too. I was mentoring at an accelerator for a telco in Thailand once, and I was asked to go spend some time with, I don't know, something like 12 people in the cohort. And one of the big questions everyone kept on asking was, Mr. Alex, how much money should we be raising? And there and then I came up with a method to actually figure that out. And that's by starting at the end. Where do you want to be? What is the goal? Do you want to sell your company for $1 billion? Yes? No? Maybe $20 million? Probably not going to work for VCs. So let's pick a big number like $1 billion. Okay, well, if you want to sell your company for $1 billion, how much revenue are you going to be making then? What is the multiple in your industry? Because that can tell you what your goal is. And then when you think about the timeline to get there, which is typically maybe 7 years to 10 years, you can then work your way backwards to figure out how you go back to the future. There we go, 80s pop reference. Boom, mic drop. So think of it this way. You want to sell for $1 billion, you're a SaaS company, and you think the multiples are about 10 times revenue. So 100 divided by 10 equals $100 million. That is your goal for your $1 billion exit. That's what you need to get to. So how many rounds of financing and how many years is it going to take you for you to get there? Now let's say there's going to be 6 rounds. You can work your way backwards to now and figure out your trajectory in order to achieve your goal. So by starting with the goal, you can understand what you need to do and what you need to deliver now to be on a path to get there. So let's look at this example here, which I'll try and zoom in if I can the most amount. Valuation, 1 billion. So these are in millions. Multiple is 10. That means your revenue would have to be $100 million in order to deliver that, okay? Billion over 10 equals 100. That is your big lofty goal. That's your plan, that's your dream. That is what you need to do. That's what we're gonna tell everyone we're gonna deliver so that your staff work your asses off in order to achieve it. So if we were to work our way backwards, we can assume at later stages we're gonna grow slower because, do you know what? Adding $40 million to something isn't all that easy, right? But adding $1 million when you're like really small, well, it's harder with the resources you have, but it's still achievable. So you can work your way backwards if you understand a couple of heuristics. And one of them is the 2D, 3T, or 3T, 2D. A guy who worked at Battery was the person who first sort of wrote about this, this notion. But it's something which I think that you need to either pick a 3T, 2D, or a 2T, 3D, depending on where you're actually starting. So we can see here, for example, under this triple, 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 double, double, or triple, triple, double, 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 we'll see where we get to depending on where we are starting. Because some people grow faster than others. So if we're starting at $1 million, you see if we triple, we get to 3, to 9, to 27, to 54, to 108. That 108 is more than what you actually need, but hey, why not? But that's what happens if you're starting out with $1 million and you go on this trajectory. Alternatively, if we're starting at $1 million, we do a 2T, 3D, so triple, triple, double, double, double. At 1 and 5 years, we end up at 72. Now, 5 years is punchy. My assumption is it does take you a year or two to get to a million anyway. So the cumulative number is going to be more like 7 to get to here, right? So a million is typically sort of what you need to be doing at a Series A, although these days that number has increased to more about like 1.5-ish, depending on what it is you're doing and the growth rates, team, etc., etc. But if you're going at 1.5, you see if we're triple, triple, double, 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 we get to 108, which is that same number before if we'd started off a different base rate. Where here, if we're starting at 1.5, except for this number, we're getting to 162. If you're at 2, and you keep going at this rate, you get to 216 of 144, which is pretty stonking. Now, the second thing you want to bear in mind is a term which is created by someone who's not known, but I think was written by not Brad Feld, the AVC.com dude, Fred Wilson, which he had a conversation with a growth investor and wrote about in a blog years ago, is you want to add up your profitability rate and your growth rate to get to 40%. So if you're losing 20% a year, but you're growing at 60, you're still at 40, right? Net, net. That's what you want to aim for. So these numbers of doubling, tripling, when you're at this sort of stage, it's over punchy. But this notion of 3T, 2D, or 2T, 3D, once you're around $1 million, is very, very helpful when you're building a financial model. Okay, it gives you an idea of what you need to be aiming for to be a VC type business. That rule of 40 is something that you want to start applying when you are at a growth stage company. Okay, so bear these things in mind. So we're talking about starting at the end and working way backwards. We therefore need to know what numbers we need to be dividing that $100 million, sequentially going back to where you are now, which could be angel, it could be seed, it could be Series A, it could be Series B. But what are the milestones you need to achieve in order to be on that trajectory? Now, why this is so powerful is because as we're working our way back to 60, we're raising 41 million at 60 million revenue, 61 million raise at 31 revenue, 15 million revenue, 1.7, 600K at seed, 0.2 at pre-seed. At angel, we're at 100, but we're tripling, doubling, and then growing 1.6 in order to get to that final number of 100 million revenue in order to get that unicorn status that investors, and I'm sure you and your significant other, will be loving, given all the shit that you're going through. But do you see how this makes sense now? Because if you are, say, at Series A, and you're at 1.7 million, you're going to raise 6 million according to the plan in order to get to 5.2 Series B. So when your Series A investor says, hey, Alexander, why are you raising 6 million? You say, whilst pausing to make it sound like you're smart, well, okay, Jim, our goal is to get to 100 million ARR, which at a 10 times multiple, which I think is pretty fair for a fairly fast growing SaaS company, will be a unicorn. We are going to raise 1, 2, 3, 4 rounds of financing in order to get there. My plan at Series B is to be at $5.2 million revenue, where I can raise $20 million. Do you think that makes sense? Sure. I mean, the numbers, they kind of make sense. I think so, right? Well, I need $6 million in order to be able to hit my milestone of $5.2 million in order to achieve that. That's why I need 6 million, and because that's what my plan says, right? Isn't that so much more compelling than saying, I don't know, 5-6 million is kind of like a normal number or something, right? You have a plan of how you're going to get to where you want to go, and this is what it will require. You could add another 20% buffer and says, look, my plan says I need 6, assuming that my ARPAs and these numbers work out right with my headcounts, salaries, etc. But I'm adding in a 20% buffer just to be careful, in which case I'm looking for 7.2 million. Does that make sense? Right? It does. So this model enables you to work from where you want to go all the way backwards and go all the way forwards to make sure those numbers make sense. So you see, on the way that I've currently put in the assumptions, we're getting to a valuation of 933, which isn't quite the billion you wanted, but it's still pretty darn close, right? Is that 10 times multiple? Hey, maybe it could be 20, who knows? Now, I'm going to teach you how to actually do this now. So it's going to start out with calculations. This isn't the simplest thing to get your head around, but I sure as hell worked really hard to try and make it as simple as possible. But follow me and read the blog, which I'll give a link in the below if you're not in the blog already. Read it and you'll understand how this works. And it's an iterative process. It's not going to be perfect. And it's very going to be heavily impacted on the quality of the inputs that you can put into them now. But with the assumptions I've given you, you should be able to do something that's pretty logical without too much crazy research. The first thing you want to do here is we're going to put in what your target exit valuation is. Maybe it's 500 million, maybe it's 100 million, maybe it's 20 billion. You got to pick a number. Pick your goal, right? Big, lofty, ambitious goal. BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal. And what's the multiple in the industry? For SaaS, it could be 10, it could be 15. For SaaS, you can check out the Best Firms Cloud Index to see what they're trading at. For public companies, these are obviously different to you, but you get an idea what they'll be. We'll go with 10 for now. So the required raise is going to be $100 million. So these numbers are in millions, okay? So we need $100 million. So you can put in a guess of to how much you think you're going to have to raise to get to an exit, which I'm sure you don't know. But put a number in. One good heuristic is to think something like $1 per revenue, at least for SaaS. For conservative wise, you maybe pick a slightly large number. So what we're effectively saying is we're going to raise $1.2 for every dollar of recurring revenue that we're going to have. Now, you have to know this number. How much revenue are you generating now? Unfortunately, nature abhors zero. So you're going to have some number to start with. Zero is not going to work in this model. So put in what your revenue number is. If you have zero revenue, you'll struggle a bit with this. You're going to have to put in something, okay? Just because that's the way math works, right? So put in what your revenue rate is. If you're at an angel round, leave it as it is. Otherwise, you could be at, say, Series A, in which case you see the numbers suddenly disappear, and these things no longer become relevant anymore. For this, I'm just going to assume you're really early. Maybe we can play around a little bit later with a later stage one, but we'll assume you're at angel. So what we want to do is start with our exit and be like, how much are we going to grow on between each round? These are not annual, okay? Between each round in order to get to where we want to be. So we're going to grow 60%, which is a 1.6 multiple over a year. We're going to grow at 100% our Series D, which is a double multiple or 100% growth. As you can see, going back, if we do 200%, it's basically tripling our revenue from 60,000 or something to 60,000 to 190,000. And because this number is the exact number which is here, because I've copied and pasted it in, that we're actually at the perfect zero, right? If you put in zero, the model doesn't like it because math doesn't like zero. Let's say we're at 1 million. We'll see that this number is higher, okay? 0.94, because it's like that 60,000 less 1 million is 940,000. So we're too high. So we can assume actually that our growth rates could be less in order to keep up with that number. It's relatively unlikely you're doing 1 million at an angel round anyway. So we'll just keep it where we're at. But you can see that your base rate will need to be jigged around the growth rates in order to figure out where you are. So like, let's say you're basically doing, 0.01. You can see that you're 50K off. So you'll need to, before you raise your angel round, get another 50K of revenue before you'll be at your base rate in order to then grow at a triple rate to $190,000. Does that make sense? Okay. So you can change these growth rates as you need. Maybe they're too high, maybe they're not too punchy, but these numbers pretty solid. Maybe you could be doubling or something around here, but typically for the first couple of rounds, you should ideally be tripling. So this tells you the delta for the amount of money that you need to be raising between each of these, right? This is the revenue increase you need to go. So 0.19 to 0.58 is, about 400K, okay? Whereas here between 31 and 62, it's 31. So the difference between 100 and 62.5 is 37.5. Booyaka. So we have calculations in my model of the implied raise from this round to tell you how much you actually need to raise, which is pretty funky. This will tell us the total amount that we're raising over time and the revenue per dollar of investment that we're getting. We'll see that that gets a lot more efficient in the future, but right now it's pretty terrible. Now, we want to be having a think about how much money you're going to be making on the clients that you make and how much money you're going to spend to get them. Okay, so ARPA is how much people are paying you. The higher ARPA, the better. So we're assuming that you make $468 a year, or it could be, I don't know, use buffer plan. How much is buffer? It's like $9 a month. Times by 12, your ARPA would be $108, which means you have 1,191 clients. Alternatively, here you need 275 clients. But how much does it cost you to acquire them? We're assuming here it's $468, but it goes up over time because as you scale, things get more expensive. They don't really normally go down. Which means that we're going to spend about 100,000, 400,000, 1.4 million in order to acquire your customers. So now we know how much clients we need and how it's going to cost to acquire them. We want to use this number in order to figure out how much money we need. So we're going to assume as a percentage of spend of the total amount, 35% will be R&D, 15% will be non-paid. So that's going to be just like your general marketing people. 30% will be paid, which means the total S&M is 45%. The remainder of the total of the 100% is your G&A. So we're assuming that about 30% of that is going to be the paid acquisition, which when we divide the acquisition cost over this will tell us kind of how much your actual spend needs to be in order to calculate that. So you see everything is linking off to that paid acquisition number. It's effectively inflating it for us. So this is the amount that we need to spend before revenue, implying how much we need to raise. So then we're just going to, because you can see on a line by line basis what the net revenue is, we're effectively just going to net out your revenue from this so that we know the actual amount that you need to raise. Now, it might be interesting to get an idea, do these numbers make sense? So what we're going to do is we're going to figure out how many people you're actually going to employ. Now, the easy way to do that is to think about what the average salary is. So R&D people, maybe you start out with some monkeys in a third world country, they're paying them 40K a year, but you end up going to Silicon Valley and you're at 150K a year. Ow. Sales and marketing people get more expensive, but not that much more expensive. G&A, you start hiring lots more fancy pants people. So whatever you think that your salary is going to change over time. This now, the headcount spend over the runway is taking this 40K, because I told you this is not annual, right? It's adjusting it for your actual runway. So 6 months is half a year. So that 40,000 person average spend is actually 20K because it's for 6 months. Whereas you've got an 18-month runway. The headcount spend over that, let's see, 117. It's a lot more than that 78. So this is adjusting for time. Now, the staff cost as a percentage of total category spend is just a simplistic way of saying how much people cost. Office space, pens, pencils, Nerf guns, laptops, all that shit. So, you know, if you're saying that you're going to spend the same amount on the salary, then your salary cost as a percentage would be 50%, right? Here, I'm assuming about 30% of the cost is going to be on other stuff. So now we know the headcount spend per person over that runway. This tells us what the headcount is. So you can see, right, I am raising 300,000, then 700,000, then 2.2 million. I'll have 11 people, 8 people, 18 people. Okay, this doesn't make sense. Why would it go down? All right, you want to check the numbers. Why does that happen? If you are now at your Series A, would you really be at 32 people? That's kind of WhatsApp numbers, right? They had like 15 engineers or something. Does that make sense? If you're a more operational company, you probably need more people, in which case I'm betting, you know, your, say, G&A or something is going to be considerably less. But put those numbers into perspective as to how many employees you have. Now, we talked about this briefly. Put in how long that money is going to last for. Maybe your angel round is very quick. Your, I don't know what this is, pre-seed round is what, 12 months? Could be 18, right? In which case the numbers will change. But you can pick how long that money lasts. So it looks like when you start raising your big rounds, B, C, Ds, Es, you're doing it every 12 months, which may make sense, but it may not make sense. You may want to be having 18 months, in which case the implications being a lot less staff. Because it's linked to like your fundraise amount, right? Now, that was the backwards way. We'll see here that if, you know, you're starting at, say, 0.2, it's like $200,000, that you're over. So you have to figure out how these numbers are going to work going forward. So what you might do is actually start down here and do this iteratively. Figure out the forward math. So you're going to start at 0.6, which is where you actually are. And we'll see how we're growing. And then we're going to end up at 93.31 million, which is delta to target is less than 100 million. So you might say I'm going to grow 250%, which means we end up at 108. So I don't know, if we call it 200, where are we? 93, 250, 108, 220. So we've pretty much figured we need to grow at about 219, 220 will get us almost to our 100 million, right? We've got 222. Boom, we're at 100, okay? So we basically know at this rate, we need to be growing now at 222 to get to our $100 million. That's the exact number we need to be doing it for to get to that target. Now, is that actually reasonable or not? I don't know, you play out these numbers going forward in order to then kind of work backwards, but they help you to kind of actually figure it out. So you can think about how much you're raising here and be thinking, do these actually make sense? Now, once you fill that in, you can actually start looking at the charts that will tell you what happens, right? Angel to seed, blah, 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 blah. Funding plan going forward is the same thing, except it's a little bit more zoomed out. This is these numbers going forward. So you can forward plan and you can see your back plan, and ideally it should end up being exactly the same, which they almost do, $200,000 off, right? So we iterated around to figure out if our plan makes sense. Then we can see some charts backwards and forwards, which how much revenue and how much you'll be raising at the different rounds in order to get there. So we can see that the revenue is bigger than the applied raise at that point of time. I showed you these charts before, they're helpful, right? So what you need to do, most of these numbers are pretty decent. Like, of course, these salary things will depend on your country. These are not terrible assumptions. Allocations, maybe more marketing driven than R&D driven or something. Compare these ratios, your ARPAs and your CACs need to be different. But then play with the growth rates. Where are you starting? What round are you starting? If you're at B, right, I'm pretty sure your numbers are probably more like 5 million. Yeah, exactly. Look, almost exactly where you need to be. So you'll be playing around from here at 5. So it looks like at 96. Maybe if you need to grow at 220%. There you go. It gets you 215%. Almost exactly the target you need to be doing. So if you're at Series B, raising 20 mil, at 5 million revenue, you need to be tripling in order to get to your Series C, at which point you want to be raising about 26 million, according to your forward plan. But the backwards plan helps you there a little bit more, right? Because it actually tells you on the basic assumptions, it's not 46, the number you actually need. Yeah, it is, it's 46.5. My number's just peculiarly accurate. What's this here? Yeah, 61 million is what you put in here, the forward plan. You actually need 107 million, which is a lot more than you thought. You can see that the charts are a little bit different now, right? Okay, and so this plan will basically help you figure out how much you need to be delivering at each individual round in order to achieve your dreams, your goals, and then be able to communicate with that investor. So here is actually what my funding plan is. I mean, sending, like you can send the model if you want, but taking a screenshot of this, having it as a screen, sharing it with them, here is what my plan is to exit. That's really pretty logical, right? And I guarantee you very, very few founders do this, mainly because they don't know how to. But with my tool, I can help you communicate with investors of why it is that you want to do what it is that you want to do and communicate a lucid plan. And you can ask them, hey, Jim, are you going to fund me at my Series C, if I'm at 15.6 million and I want to raise 26.3 million, I'll be growing double on that year? No, Alex, actually, I think you need to be a bit higher. In which case, either your costs and things need to be coming down or you need to raise more money. what's the point of raising money that's just not going to help you get to where you need to be if that's not the right number? Okay, guys, keep hustling.